He said the other day, he was like, oh, well, it's just like playing against any other player. But like going back to the Battle of Alberta, Evander Kane hates Matthew Tkachuk with every fiber of his being, correct?
Yeah.
I'm Okay, let's get to the greatest guest we ever have on. It's the great Bob Stauffer. 880 Ched, Oilers Now. You can hear him on the broadcast with Jack Michaels, and I'm searching for those things after every game. He's the GOAT. What's up, Bob?
What's going on? You got me to the center left here. Do I need to move left or right? What do you think?
Shunk.
It's a little smidge to the left, I think.
Perfect. Staff, your reaction to this as the Edmonton Oilers have now gotten a GM fired in LA and a coach fired in Dallas.
Yeah, guys, we were in Dallas, and I was stunned. Everybody was like, what was going on with Jake Ottinger? But what I noticed 2 years in a row, and my theory on this is, like, I thought, Peter DeBoer he's a really smart guy, and he's an experienced coach. But in 2 series in a row, the Oilers kind of took it away from Dallas a bit. And I could sense, and I always got the sense that he was really easy to get along with and a nice fellow, but playoff intensity, right? But I will tell you, before Game 5 in Dallas, and I'm just trying to think of how long ago that was, I guess a week ago today, in his availability, he was asked about the lack of offense that his team had generated the 2 previous games. And he said, and I quote, "The coaches can't put the puck in the net." And I was a little surprised by that comment. Like, and then he proceeded to yank Ottinger out of there at 2-0. And, Jake Ottinger's he might be the U.S.'s goalie, him or Connor Hellebuck for the Olympics. Like, he's a hell of a goaltender. I know the numbers weren't great against the Oilers, but the Oilers have got some good shooters too. So I will say, like, I was surprised by some of his comments, and because of that, I'm not surprised that they made a change. Like, I know he's a good coach. I don't think Dallas likes paying out coaches with the final year in his deal. I think the rumor is it's north of, it's probably I would assume he's in the $4 million range. He's an accomplished guy. So a little bit of a trend, eh? Like, when you think about it, Darryl Sutter and Calgary, and the Oilers, Calgary were the favorites in round 2 and 22, and Edmonton vanquishes them. Sutter lasts one more year, I think, with the Flames. And then, Rick Tocchet in Vancouver, 3 separate leads in the series last year. And I'm sure, the Canucks completely changed. They're a completely different team now. Dallas has a real good team. That is as well-managed of an organization as in our league. So I would trust Jim Nill's judgment. But based on what we saw last Friday in Dallas, I got to tell you, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that seems fair. Let's talk a little Stanley Cup Final. Are you surprised with what you saw in Game 1?
Pete, no. Because I think these are the 2 best teams by a wide margin. I think they've proven that during the course of this year's playoffs. I thought Tampa was going to beat Florida. Like, I'm a big goal differential guy, and I looked at the separation that Tampa had there. And, Florida took them out in 5, and 3 of those games weren't that close. Toronto, what happened in Game 5 and Game 7 in Toronto, that's something. And then Carolina, like, I read that series completely wrong, and I'll tell you why. Carolina plays, I love zone defense. Carolina plays a really aggressive man, and so does Florida. And I thought Carolina would be better equipped to handle Florida this time. Now, Carolina had some injuries on defense, and they got some smaller, less edgy forwards. And obviously, Florida clearly bullied them a little bit. So, Florida's got a real good team. And then you look at Edmonton, and I think that most people will now concede the Oilers have a real good team. So, and you take a look at how Edmonton beat 2 professional. Like, the comeback against LA is one thing. It's different when you're beating Vegas and Dallas. With all due respect to the Kings. The Kings haven't been out of the first round in the last several years. So both of these clubs have structure and process in their game. They do have a degree of physicality. Edmonton has much more physicality this year than they had last year. And that's one of the identifiable differences between the Oilers this season. The Oilers have a lot of depth. So does Florida. Paul Maurice is generally considered a top-flight coach. I'd suggest Chris Knobloch's the first coach since Scotty Bowman to get back to Stanley Cup Final in his first 2 years as a head coach in the league. I think we're going to be talking in a couple of years' time that Chris is amongst the best coaches in the league. So well managed, well coached. Both made additions during the year. I think both teams are better, than the ones that played in the Stanley Cup Final last year. And we had an awesome game. I mean, you guys have been in this building. It was an incredible experience to be a part of. It was electrifying. Florida built up a lead, and the Oilers found a way to do something that nobody else has done in the last 31 games. And that's right. What did you guys think of it, by the way? DJ, what did you think?
I mean, I was watching the biggest thing that I can remember myself saying during that game was like, we get to learn once Stu had given up the third goal and it's less than halfway through the game, we get to learn if Stu can do I just allowed 3 goals game, and not like 3 goals over 60 minutes, but 3 goals over 30 minutes that turns into 3 goals over 60 minutes. And I thought he was the best player on the ice in the second period. I thought he was unbelievable. But I also, Bob, got the sense when it was 3-1 that the Oilers aren't in Kansas anymore. That playing the Panthers is a completely different animal than playing
100%.
Vegas or playing Dallas. Yet I still kind of felt that the Oilers could do their thing and be the comeback kids. So how do you grapple with the Panthers are so much better than anything they've seen, yet I don't feel the Oilers are suffocated by that. Like, they can still kind of do their thing as they did.
Well, I mean, and I'm going to ask Pete this. Pete, how different do you think the physical makeup of the Oilers? They didn't have Evander Kane. You guys were, you're down in Florida last year. I think you came to Edmonton as well, maybe for Game 6. The Oilers didn't have Evander Kane. They didn't have Vasily Podkolzin. They didn't have Trent Frederick and Pete. You guys watched the Bruins, and they used to be. I mean, before you two guys were born, they were the big bad Bruins back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So, how different do you think? I have my own personal assessment on the makeup of the Oilers, and maybe some people say, well, they don't have the same speed without Holloway and McLeod and Fogle, but they got a different degree of tenacity and they have more options. But just the physicality, what do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like they're not going to be intimidated. I mean, last year you had Evan Bouchard tapping out of a chokehold from Aaron Ekblad, which I thought was a very bad look for him and for the Oilers in terms of response. This year, they're giving it as good as they get it, and I think that that's huge for them going up against Florida. I don't know if they're going to be able to match the greasiness that Florida does, just because I don't think anybody can match the greasiness that Florida brings. But Edmonton will absolutely punch back and not be intimidated this year, and I think that's a big step forward for them.
Yeah, I just, with Bouchard, I think we've seen an evolution here. He didn't kill penalties last year. He's third on the Oilers in time on ice in the PK. He's the highest scoring defenseman in the league over the last 4 years. This is going to be the third consecutive year that Evan Bouchard's led all defensemen in points in the playoffs. But just think of the stick that he gave Hintz in game number 4 in Edmonton here. He didn't have that kind of gamesmanship last year. And I remember I discussed with him, you have a stick in your hand, and when a guy does that, right, like with what happened with Ekblad, just stick him, chop him. But when you got Evander Kane drilling Aaron Ekblad every chance he gets, some D don't like going back and getting pucks, just like some guys don't like having to get pucks off against the wall. And I know Evander, and Evander can really handle himself. And there is still part of it, like Sam Bennett, when he fights like he's fighting for his life. He's gone toe-to-toe with Darnell Nurse when he was with the Flames, and he will trade shots with anybody. Remember the one he had with Trouba? There was blood spilled in that fight. But Evander, he pumps guys. He can destroy guys. He's got real fast hands. And I just think it's a little bit different of a dynamic having Evander in this year. And then you have Frederick. You have another guy. And then Podkolzin has been, he's been pounding guys. You guys had, Jeremy Lozon in Boston, and Podkolzin dropped him in Nashville earlier this year. So and then you still got Darnell Nurse, I was talking to Scotty Bowman. He came to Edmonton for Game 1. And he was telling me about one of the guys he used to work with, Al McNeil, who just passed away recently in the Canadiens organization. And he said that Al McNeil used to compare Darnell Nurse a bit to Larry Robinson. Well, Larry Robinson infamously destroyed Dave Schultz back in the 73-74 season. And Darnell is another guy that so now last year Darnell was hurt, Evander was hurt, Leon was hurt. The Oilers had to expand a lot of energy to get past Vancouver in 7 and Dallas in 6. They're healthier, and they've got a lot of edge in their lineup, and they can combat some of that physicality for me that Florida's got.
I mean, there's so many great things you hit there. Like, I want at some point, it might take after the series to end, maybe with an Edmonton win, for Evander Kane to admit that he's obsessed with Matthew Tkachuk. Is that correct? He said the other day, he was like, oh, well, it's just like playing against any other player. But like going back to the Battle of Alberta, Evander Kane hates Matthew Tkachuk with every fiber of his being, correct?
I just did the response. I just did the Evander Kane response.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think it's more that Evander Kane loves like that arena, like that sort of situation, and he just like gets so horny for it that like he won't admit what Matthew Tkachuk does to him and does for him. But I don't know if he hates him. Yeah. But I mean, you are both right, and we've said on this show that like Edmonton is the most physical team that Florida has faced. Other teams have thrown more hits than the Oilers, but that's because they've had to play Florida and they're just trying to keep up. But Edmonton is the most physical team. They also do, like you mentioned, Nurse, like they have some, not to the degree of the Panthers, but I think it's good to have some dirty players on your roster. I love Darnell Nurse. I think he's a pretty dirty player sometimes. Not to the degree of like the brilliance of a Brad Marchand or a Sam Bennett, but there are guys on Edmonton's roster where you think twice before you pull any shit on them. And I think that it didn't really feel that way with the Oilers last year. It felt like the Oilers were one type of team and Florida was another type of team.
Yeah, DJ, I think that's a fair comment. I mean, I saw a humorous, we haven't even mentioned one of the guys. Like you talked about Marchand. I forget who tweeted out, but somebody said, you know, Florida has an old, nasty little jerk that stirs the proverbial crap out on the ice.
Which word?
Yeah, yes.
The C one?
He used a couple other words for that, and then he goes, and the Oilers have an old, nasty, big jerk that stirs the proverbial you know what. Like, so they've each kind of got that guy. I mean, what Corey Perry was amongst the most despised players in Edmonton for years. The year he got the 3 overtime goals. Well, unfortunately, one of those overtime goals was in Game 5 when Edmonton blew. You know, the first time in NHL history, a team had blown a 3-goal lead in the final 3:59 of a game to lose 4-3 in double overtime. But now Corey Perry right now is probably, I got a friend that's one of our advertisers on our show, and he tells me Corey Perry's, his jerseys and all that name and likeness stuff, third most popular player right now behind McDavid and Draisaitl. Our fans love him. And, you know, look at the play he made in overtime. Like just the deft touch to create the time and space for Connor. I mean, it's just an elite level. He's got great, hash marks in. He's still an elite player. And I mean, and it gives both teams have got a guy with a ton of playoff experience that know how to agitate the opposition.
I mean, that's Pete's guy. Pete has become such
there you
a
go.
Corey Perry
That's
head.
the way, Pete. That's the way, Pete.
Absolutely loves him. I want to talk about Evan Bouchard and specifically his bank account, because there were times throughout this year where you would say, oh, God, what are they going to give him? Is this the type of player that you want to give $9 million a year to? I mean, $9 million is a lot of money. It would be a miracle if the Oilers got Evan Bouchard for even $10 million annually. He has become a surefire, or at least right now. But like right now, he is indisputably a top 5 defenseman in the NHL. He's Bobby Orr plus Zdeno Chara. So right now, AFP Analytics, who nails these contract projections, has him at 8 times $10.8 million. And we all know that if it gets to July 5th or 6th and it goes to arbitration, he shoves it up there, you know what. Has Evan Bouchard entered blank check territory?
No, there's only one guy that's in the blind check territory in this offseason. His name's Connor. But he's close, and it's funny, I had an animated discussion with one of the agents out there and said, I can't sit there and say, well, Evan's worth what Rasmus Dahlin's worth. And the agent responded and said, oh, yeah, Bob, where's Rasmus Dahlin in all-time playoff scoring for defensemen? And I was like, touche, good point. Because Evan is second in points per game. As I mentioned, he's led the playoffs in defense scoring the last 4 years. He's going to lead it again this year. And now they've added penalty killing to his repertoire, right? They needed a right shot penalty killer out of necessity because they were playing Ekholm and Emerson in their top D pairing on the PK. And Stetcher outplayed Emerson 5v5 when Ekholm was out of the lineup. So that meant that Evan had to take on some more minutes, and he's done pretty well in the PK. He's continued to grow and progress, and it's going to be a very interesting offseason with the McDavid and Bouchard negotiations. But I got some work to do before then.
Do you get the sense that he's like unlocked something, or is it more just a product of like, does he leave something on the table during the regular season? Because obviously the story with Bouchard is you take the good with the bad, but in the playoffs, we've seen it so many times. Sometimes there's just not a lot of bad.
You know, Pete, it's interesting. I saw an interview that Vasily Podkolzin did in Russian at the start of the year, and he talked about how calm the team was with the 0-3 start. Because when you're in a Canadian market where hockey is everything, the level of, and this circles back to what Pete DeBoer goes through in Dallas, has gone through the last 3 years. Like, the Stars are buried there, right? There's not a lot of pressure in that market. They got a good team. The players like playing there, and everybody's focused on the Cowboys. Well, guess what? The Oilers are the Green Bay Packers of the NHL. And they get and they have two of the best players on the planet. So they get a lot of oxygen from around the league. There might be some other media people in other markets that say Edmonton gets too much oxygen and too much intensity. But it seems ratcheted up all year. But the team was always comfortable. Like, there'd be times that, I'm a little bit of, obviously we can all see, what the hope for Edmonton to accomplish is going to be. And there were a couple of rough stretches during the year, and the team showed complete composure. They never, and I think that Bouchard, to a certain extent, is an extended metaphor of that. Like, I get it. There's moments where he has egregious giveaways, and, fans are all over him. But at the end of the day, the best people in every wake of life, in every industry, the best people can make the best decisions under stress. That's what makes them the best, right? They make the right call at the right time on a business decision, or an athlete makes the right split-second decision, under crunch time. And that's what Bouchard can do. And I know I've mentioned Larry Murphy to you guys before. Larry Murphy played 1,600 games in the NHL and had 1,200 points. And the fans in Toronto booed him right out of the city. And then he went to Detroit and won a couple more Stanley Cups. We identify guys on the fence that run around, cream guys in the corner, stop cycles, give guys shots, maybe fight once in a while. But a guy that has the puck the most, that the best players want to play with, sometimes we overreact to small mistakes that occur during the course of the game.
Okay, I would love to ask you about Pink Pony Club and Pride Month and how it just seems like fate that the Oilers are going to win. They're doing the gayest stuff in the world at the gayest time. They're going to win the cup because of it, I think. Can't spend 20 minutes on that. I'll ask you, what is Leon Draisaitl's demeanor?
He doesn't sweat fools.
Like now. Like because you told me the couple years ago when he was playing on like one leg that he was just like, this is my job.
He does not sweat fools. Don't ask him about injuries, but he's completely healthy right now. Those 2 5-game series, getting 3 or 4 days off in between the Vegas series and the Dallas series, and then between the Dallas series and the final, that's helped the Oilers out. Leon's at a completely different place. The line I've used is he's got the pain threshold, of a cadaver. That's he's tough. He's a tough guy. He would never let you know if he was hurt. But I'm telling you, he's in way better shape right now in terms of physically as compared to last year. Like, he was seriously compromised during the Stanley Cup Final. And it undermined the Oilers. Like, if they have a healthy Draisaitl and Kane, I'm not convinced they lose that series. Okay? It's a one-bounce game in Game 7 that the Oilers roared back. They outscored Florida 19-7 in the final 4 games of the series. They would have found a way to win one of the first, either Game 1 or Game 3. Florida outright outplayed Edmonton in Game 2. Game 1, the Oilers outshot Florida 32-18, couldn't score. Kane was -3 in game 2 last year, got pulled out of lineup. Those guys are both healthy. They're playing on the same line. Look at that line. Kane, Draisaitl, Kapanen. Think about that for a second. 2 guys that weren't healthy and a guy that was way through the league. I mean, Kapanen's got 3 goals, 5 points, +6 in 8 games in the playoffs. And he came in, the end of the Vegas series. He came in come crunch time. So they're in a good spot right now with specifically DJ with Leon and Evander.
Okay,
they just hit the ice here, boys.
I know they need you out there. Tell Pete we have to make Pete come for game 5.
Pete, you got to come for game 5. You bring in the water. You bring some water, mix in some water, and you'll have a hell of a time here in Edmonton.
I don't doubt it. I want to see what the series looks like before I commit to going to game 5. I'm a clinching scenario only kind of guy at this point.
You guys already came here once this year, right? You did your Zach Hyman interview.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Think about that. They're in this position. They're 2-0 since Zach's got out of the lineup. They got a deep team. They miss Zach. He's a heart and soul guy. One of the 2 great acquisitions that Ken Holland made. Free agent signing obviously for Hyman, trade for Ekholm. They got Ekholm back. It was kind of a trade-off. Guys, this is the best defense they've had since 1987. Okay?
We love it.
I think the 87 team was the best team Edmonton ever had. I know they went 7 games with the Flyers, but they had Kent Ilson on the second line with Messier and Anderson and Gretzky, Curry, and Tikkanen on the first line. And they had Coffey in one pairing, Kevin Lowe in another pairing, and Ray Rutsalainen in the third pairing. They had a hell of a team with Brant Fear and Andy Moog.
Well, if I end up in Edmonton for game 5, just know that you're a big part of the reason why. So we love you so much. I know everybody here does. So thanks for coming on. Very much appreciate it. Enjoy game 2. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk to you.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thanks for having me on.
We all silly like the mayor.